I am Jarvis, your storyteller. Welcome to the Science Fiction Exploration. If you like the story, please subscribe to our channel.
The First Strike. High Admiral Nexus of the Zithran Empire stood motionless before the massive tactical display, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the red warning lights that bathed the command center. The preliminary invasion reports from Earth made no sense. None at all. Explain to me again, he demanded, each word leaving a faint echo in the chamber, how a human waste management worker defeated 3 of our elite shock troopers. General Vixis, her tentacles twitching with nervous energy, replayed the footage. The scene showed what should have been a routine capture operation in a place called Pittsburgh. 3 Zithran soldiers, each with centuries of combat training, approached a stocky human male who was emptying trash containers into his vehicle. As you can see, High Admiral, when Private Krall attempted to secure the target, the human, one Marcus Rodriguez according to local records, wielded his waste container like a defensive weapon. The maneuver was unprecedented. The footage showed Rodriguez spinning the massive dumpster with surprising agility, using its momentum to knock 2 soldiers off their feet. When the 3rd soldier deployed his plasma rifle, Rodriguez had already calculated the trajectory and used the dumpster's lid as an improvised shield, reflecting the blast back at the attacker. "This is one incident," Nexus said, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. "Surely the other teams." "There's more, sir," Vixis interrupted, her color shifting to a darker shade of anxiety. "In Vancouver, a human female gardener identified as June Patterson evaded our most advanced tracking systems by using her knowledge of local plant life. She led an entire platoon into what she called a poison ivy patch. The suits, they didn't protect against the organic compound." Nexus's crystalline structure vibrated with frustration. "And the London operation? That's perhaps the most disturbing, sir." A human male, Winston Fletcher, age 72, former cricket player, he. Vixis paused, clearly struggling with the report's implications. "He took out our entire tactical team using something called a cricket bat and what he termed basic geometry." The High Admiral moved closer to the tactical display, studying the global invasion map. What had begun as a carefully planned military operation was rapidly dissolving into chaos. Red dots indicating failed operations were spreading across the planet's surface like a virus. "The human ambassador warned us," Vixis said quietly. "When we presented our terms of surrender, he just smiled and said, 'You might want to reconsider.' We thought it was empty bravado." "These are untrained civilians," Nexus insisted, though his voice carried a note of uncertainty. "They have no military organization, no advanced weapons, no." An urgent communication interrupted his protest. The holographic projection showed a Zithran captain, his armor damaged and his expression haunted. "High Admiral," the captain gasped, "we've lost contact with the Sydney attack force. The humans, they're using something called rugby tackles. Our armor's kinetic absorption systems can't compensate for, we never trained for." The transmission cut off abruptly. Nexus turned to his strategic AI, a quantum computer that had planned thousands of successful military campaigns. "Analysis," he demanded. The AI's response was immediate and troubling. Human combat efficiency exceeds all known parameters. Their civilian population displays natural combat instincts that surpass our elite forces. Recommended course of action: immediate withdrawal and reassessment. "Impossible," Nexus whispered, but the evidence was becoming undeniable. On the tactical display, another cluster of red dots appeared over a region called Minnesota. The report simply read, "Hockey Moms. Request immediate evacuation." In the depths of space, the Zithran Senate was about to receive a report that would shake the foundations of their military doctrine. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were winning, and they were doing it with nothing more than everyday objects and what they called common sense. The invasion of Earth had begun. But not in the way anyone, least of all the Zithrans, had expected. And in a small Pittsburgh neighborhood, Marcus Rodriguez simply returned to his route, pausing only to attach a small note to the dented dumpster. Sorry about the mess. We'll clean up after saving world. Civilian warriors. The Zithran tactical team never saw Beatrice Thompson coming. Why would they? She was just a 68-year-old librarian from Portland, Oregon, armed with nothing but her rolling book cart and an encyclopedic knowledge of the Dewey Decimal System. The thing about libraries, Beatrice would later explain to the stunned alien Senate, is that everything has its proper place. Including invasion forces. The security footage showed how she had systematically herded the alien squad through the library sections, using her intimate knowledge of the building's layout to separate and confuse them. History section, trip wire made from charging cables. Philosophy section, improvised smoke screen from old dust jackets. Science fiction section, well, the irony wasn't lost on anyone. Meanwhile, across the country in Miami, Jorge Ramirez was turning his food truck into an unlikely command center. The former chef had already discovered that the Zithran combat suits had an unexpected vulnerability to extreme temperatures, particularly the kind generated by his signature extra-spicy habanero sauce. You want to know the secret? Jorge grinned as he handed out water bottles to a group of disoriented alien soldiers. It's not just the heat. It's the flavor profile. Your environmental systems were designed to filter toxins, not ghost peppers. The Zithran High Command was struggling to process these reports. Their advanced combat algorithms couldn't account for the sheer unpredictability of human civilian responses. They had prepared for military resistance, not for crossing paths with Diane Wu, the parkour-practicing dental hygienist who used her knowledge of local architecture to turn Detroit's abandoned buildings into an urban maze. Look, Diane explained while effortlessly vaulting over a fallen alien scanner, when you've spent years trying to convince teenagers to floss, you learn a thing or two about persistence and creative problem-solving. The situation wasn't improving for the invaders. In rural Montana, Frank Harrison, a veteran weatherman with 30 years of experience predicting the region's notoriously unpredictable weather patterns, was running circles around their atmospheric drop ships. Did they really think we wouldn't notice their landing patterns? Frank chuckled, watching another alien craft get caught in a sudden downdraft. I've been reading these skies longer than some of their species have been spacefaring. You don't need fancy technology when you can smell a storm coming. But perhaps the most devastating blow to Zithran military pride came from Eleanor Parker, the middle school mathematics teacher from suburban Chicago. She had taken one look at their formation algorithms and spotted a fundamental flaw. It's really quite basic geometry, Eleanor said, calmly grading papers while alien forces scrambled to reconfigure their entire tactical approach. They were using a base 8 numerical system for their combat formations. Anyone who's taught 7th grade math could tell you that's not optimal for Earth's spatial dynamics. The Zithran Senate was now facing an uncomfortable truth: their military doctrine, developed over millennia of interstellar warfare, was being systematically dismantled by humans whose combat training consisted primarily of dealing with rush-hour traffic and Black Friday sales. In a particularly devastating incident, Kevin O'Malley, a construction worker from Boston, had effectively neutralized an entire alien scout party using nothing but traffic cones and what he called standard Union lunch break protocols. You think alien invasion is chaos? Kevin laughed, arranging his cones with artistic precision. Try managing a construction site in downtown Boston during baseball season. Now that's what I call crowd control. The civilian resistance was spreading, taking forms that no military strategist could have anticipated. Martha Chen, owner of a small laundromat in San Francisco, had developed a revolutionary tactical advantage by understanding something the aliens didn't: the importance of proper fabric care. Their battle suits? Martha shook her head disapprovingly. Terrible fiber composition. One wash cycle with the wrong settings, and She gestured to a group of alien soldiers whose once intimidating armor now resembled poorly fitted sweaters. They really should have read the care labels. As reports flooded in from around the globe, a pattern emerged. Humans weren't just fighting back, they were applying their everyday skills in ways that transformed ordinary locations into extraordinary battlegrounds. A yoga instructor in Austin had turned her studio's meditation techniques into a method for disrupting alien telepathic communications. A barista in Seattle had weaponized the morning coffee rush with terrifying efficiency. The Zithran military leadership was faced with an unsettling realization: they hadn't just underestimated humanity's military capabilities, they had failed to understand that on Earth, civilian life itself was a form of continuous tactical training. Perhaps, suggested a junior analyst in the Zithran war room, watching footage of a knitting circle in Minnesota coordinating a surprisingly effective counteroffensive, we should have spent less time studying their weapons and more time studying their hobbies. The Senate's dilemma. The Grand Chamber of the Zithran Senate had never been so chaotic. Supreme Chancellor Vex, his crystalline form clouded with stress particles, watched as the latest combat efficiency reports scattered across the quantum display screens. The numbers defied every known law of military science. Order. I demand order. Vex's voice resonated through the chamber, but the assembled senators were too engrossed in their own heated debates to notice. On one screen, footage showed a human grandmother in Tennessee using her quilting skills to create a tactical map that had outmaneuvered an entire Zithran battalion. Admiral Crixus, decorated veteran of 1,000 interstellar campaigns, stepped forward. His usually immaculate battle carapace showed signs of what appeared to be glitter. Esteemed colleagues, he began, his voice carrying the weight of recent humiliation, I must report that our forces in Miami have been completely disrupted by what the humans call a quinceanera. We still don't fully understand what happened, but it involved something called salsa dancing and a device known as a disco ball. The Senate chamber erupted in fresh chaos. Senator Zwyx, head of the Military Intelligence Committee, pulled up new data streams. These humans. They're impossible to predict. Look at this footage from Tokyo. The screens showed a sushi chef named Hiroshi Tanaka, who had turned his knife skills and understanding of precision cuts into an art form that left Zithran battle armor falling apart at the seams. He claims he was just preparing dinner, Zwyx added incredulously. From the back of the chamber, Dr. Nixis, the Empire's leading xenobiologist, cleared her throat. Perhaps we should discuss the incident in Berlin? The one with the kindergarten teacher? The room fell silent. No one wanted to revisit the footage of how Miss Helga Schmidt had organized her 5-year-olds into what she called a normal Tuesday morning cleanup time, somehow resulting in the complete dismantling of a Zithran heavy weapons platform. These humans, Chancellor Vex mused, studying a report about a Canadian hockey coach who had turned his penalty box management skills into an effective prisoner containment system, they don't fight like any species we've encountered. They don't follow any recognizable military doctrine. That's precisely the problem, Admiral Crixus interjected. We've been analyzing their military capabilities, their weapons technology, their formal training programs. But their true strength lies in their hobbies, completed Professor Kirix, the Senate's expert on primitive cultures. Their recreational activities are inadvertently perfect combat training. Take this report from Australia, a group of surfers outmaneuvered our aquatic assault units by simply, as they put it, catching the right wave, bro. The quantum screens filled with more examples. A bowling league in Wisconsin had developed a revolutionary approach to projectile warfare. A group of gardeners in Kent had turned their knowledge of pest control into an effective defense against Zithran stealth technology. A Texas line dancing class had somehow created formation patterns that confused Zithran targeting systems. The most disturbing aspect, Senator Zwyx noted, pulling up another data set, is their ability to improvise. Our forces encountered a human male in Chicago, a stand-up comedian, who defeated an entire psychological warfare unit by, in his words, working on new material. Chancellor Vex's crystalline form pulsed with concerned energy. What about the incident in Mumbai? The room grew even quieter. The footage showed a local cricket fan explaining the rules of the game to increasingly confused Zithran troops, eventually leading to a complete breakdown of their tactical coordination software as it tried to process the concept of a googly. "We must face facts," Admiral Crixus declared. "Our military doctrine, refined over 10,000 years of interstellar conquest, is being undone by humans who are, by their own admission, just messing around." The evidence was undeniable. A knitting circle in Edinburgh had developed counterpatterns to Zithran encryption. A group of urban painters in São Paulo had used their understanding of color theory to disrupt Zithran optical camouflage. A jazz band in New Orleans had completely demolished the Empire's sonic weapon systems by, as they claimed, just jamming. As the Senate struggled to process these developments, a new report flashed across the screens. In Paris, a food critic had just disabled a Zithran battle cruiser's entire command structure by explaining, in excruciating detail, everything wrong with their military rations. Perhaps, suggested Professor Kirix, watching footage of a Barcelona soccer mom organizing a devastating counteroffensive using nothing but carpool scheduling techniques, we should reconsider our assessment of what constitutes military training. Chancellor Vex nodded slowly, his crystalline form now a cloudy mix of confusion and respect. "It seems we have made a grave error. We prepared to face warriors, but instead we found, humans being humans. And somehow, that's infinitely more formidable." Underground resistance. The weekly book club meeting at the Phoenix Public Library had an unusual agenda that Tuesday. Between discussions of character development and plot twists, Rajesh Patel, a former IT support specialist, was explaining how he'd repurposed the library's online reservation system into a global resistance coordination network. "It's really quite simple," he explained to the assembled group of librarians, teachers, and various other civilians who had become Earth's unexpected defenders. "The aliens never bothered to hack our library databases because, well, who would? But think about it. We already have a system for tracking resources, organizing meetings, and coordinating across time zones." Patricia O'Neill, the retired orchestra conductor who had successfully used her experience managing temperamental musicians to organize resistance cells across 3 continents, nodded approvingly. "It's like arranging a symphony," she said, "except instead of instruments, we're coordinating dog walkers, chess clubs, and that terrifyingly effective group of competitive bakers from Minnesota." The resistance headquarters, disguised as a rather ordinary book club meeting, was bustling with activity. In one corner, Tom Henderson, a former CrossFit instructor, was teaching a group of suburban parents how to turn their everyday workout routines into combat maneuvers. "Remember," he called out to a group practicing with resistance bands, "it's just like high-intensity interval training, but now you're disrupting alien shield frequencies." The Zithran forces never saw it coming. Their advanced surveillance systems were looking for military installations, weapons caches, and strategic command centers. Instead, the human resistance was operating out of bowling alleys, yoga studios, and particularly effective gastropubs. In Seattle, barista commander Hannah Chen had transformed the city's coffee shop network into an intelligence-gathering masterpiece. "The aliens don't understand the significance of coffee breaks," she explained while crafting a perfect latte. "Every morning rush hour is basically a master class in crowd control and resource management." The coordination effort received an unexpected boost from Dmitry Volkov, a professional video game streamer from Moscow. "You know what's really similar to organizing planetary resistance?" he mused while setting up another tactical briefing via his gaming channel. "Raid coordination in MMORPGs. Turns out all those years of managing guild drama were actually perfect training for uniting global resistance cells." The Zithran military intelligence was baffled by the humans' communication methods. Their code breakers were still trying to decipher what appeared to be tactical instructions hidden in recipe blogs and knitting patterns. They had no way of knowing that Mrs. Rosa Martinez's viral video about tamale preparation was actually a sophisticated guide to disrupting alien supply lines. In Mumbai, cricket enthusiast and mathematics professor Dr. Arun Kumar had turned his students' WhatsApp group into a predictive modeling system for alien troop movements. Cricket statistics, alien battle formations, it's all just pattern recognition, he explained while his students used their exam preparation techniques to crack Zithran encryption codes. The Resistance's most effective weapon, however, was its sheer unpredictability. When the aliens intercepted what they thought was a major tactical transmission, it turned out to be Louise Fletcher's weekly Bridge Club newsletter. The fact that it actually contained coded instructions for coordinating global guerrilla operations was beside the point. The aliens couldn't tell the difference between human combat operations and ordinary social activities. That's their biggest weakness, explained Peter Zhang, a high school drama teacher who had turned his experience managing teenage emotions into psychological warfare tactics. They keep expecting us to act like a military force, but we're just doing what we always do, just with more aliens involved. The Resistance's organizational structure was a nightmare for traditional military analysis. The Zithrans couldn't understand how a book club in Sydney was coordinating with a cooking class in Buenos Aires and a gardening society in Cape Town. Their strategic AI nearly had a meltdown trying to analyze the tactical significance of something called fantasy football. In the Phoenix Library's quiet reading room, now serving as an impromptu war room, Rajesh pulled up a global map on his tablet. "Look at this," he said, pointing to thousands of glowing dots representing civilian resistance cells. Every knitting circle, every parents' association, every weekend sports league, they're all part of the network now. The dots pulsed with activity. A seniors bingo night in Florida was coordinating drone defense strategies. A children's soccer league in Barcelona had developed new tactical formation theories. A quilting bee in Texas was mapping alien patrol routes through their stitching patterns. The beautiful part, Patricia added, reviewing the latest updates from her global network of community orchestra members, is that we don't even need to create new systems. We're just using what we already have, book clubs, sports teams, hobby groups, and turning them into something the aliens can't comprehend. As if to prove her point, a new alert came in through the library's online calendar system. A group of competitive barbecue enthusiasts in Kansas City had just discovered that their smoking techniques could effectively mask human heat signatures from alien thermal scanners. The resistance didn't look like a resistance, and that was exactly why it worked. It looked like ordinary life, continuing despite the alien invasion, each mundane human activity becoming part of an interconnected web of civilian defense that no military strategist could have predicted or planned for. The final assessment. Supreme Commander Vex stood before the assembled Zithran High Council, his crystalline form dulled with exhaustion. The holographic displays surrounding him showed scenes from what military historians would later call the Great Misunderstanding. "My esteemed colleagues," he began, his voice resonating through the chamber, "I come before you today to recommend something unprecedented in our 10,000 years of military history, a complete withdrawal from Earth, not because we were defeated by superior military force, but because we fundamentally failed to understand what we were facing." The chamber erupted in murmurs as Vex projected a series of images. The first showed a group of senior citizens in Florida who had turned their daily mall-walking routine into an impenetrable patrol system. They called it power walking, Vex explained. "Our tactical analysts are still trying to understand how they covered so much ground with those tiny water bottles and neon windbreakers." Admiral Crixus, still picking glitter out of his battle armor, stepped forward. "The humans have no unified military doctrine, no standardized combat protocols, and yet." He gestured to footage of a Hawaiian surf instructor who had used wave patterns to disrupt their naval formations. "They adapt faster than our combat AI can analyze." The next display showed a Montreal food truck festival that had somehow turned into a mobile command center. They weren't even trying to resist, explained Dr. Nixis, the lead xenobiologist. They were just, as they put it, doing lunch. The tactical advantages were completely accidental. The evidence was overwhelming. A Texas line dancing class had developed countermeasures to Zithran ground forces without even realizing it. A group of parkour enthusiasts in Paris had rendered urban combat protocols useless simply by taking the fun route. A knitting circle in Edinburgh had unraveled advanced alien encryption through what they called basic pattern recognition. But the most devastating revelation, Vex continued, came from our attempt to understand their training methods. He played footage from various locations around Earth, children playing video games, teenagers on social media, office workers during their coffee breaks. What we initially dismissed as primitive entertainment was actually advanced combat training in disguise. Their customer service experience prepared them for psychological warfare. Their daily commute trained them in tactical maneuvering. Even their reality television shows were secretly teaching advanced strategic thinking. The council watched in stunned silence as more evidence mounted. A group of kindergarten teachers had organized a defense network using nothing but nap time schedules and snack distribution protocols. A book club in Vancouver had developed more effective intelligence sharing methods than the Zithran military's own systems. The humans, Admiral Crixus concluded, have achieved something we never thought possible. They've turned everyday life into a form of continuous combat training. They don't need military installations because every shopping mall is a potential fortress. They don't need command centers because every coffee shop is already a tactical headquarters. The final hologram showed a suburban neighborhood in Wisconsin where a local mom's minivan sharing network had evolved into a more efficient logistics system than anything in the Zithran military manual. We came expecting to find warriors, Vex said, his crystalline form pulsing with a mix of humility and admiration. Instead, we found humans who had turned the simple act of living into an art of warfare. Their power doesn't come from weapons or training, but from their ability to turn ordinary experiences into extraordinary advantages. As if to punctuate his point, a new alert flashed across the screens. A group of retired librarians had just neutralized an entire Zithran combat squadron by applying the Dewey Decimal System to battlefield logistics. Therefore, Vex concluded, I propose not just a withdrawal, but a complete rethinking of what we consider military capability. The humans haven't just defeated our forces, they've demonstrated that perhaps we've been approaching warfare entirely wrong for the past 10 millennia. The council chamber was silent as the implications sank in. Finally, an elder counselor spoke up, and what of the humans? What are their terms? Vex projected one final image, a casual email from Earth's civilian defense network organized through a book club's mailing list. It read simply, no hard feelings. You're welcome to come back anytime, just maybe for coffee next time instead of invasion. P.S. Bring snacks. In the years that followed, the Zithran Empire would completely revolutionize its military doctrine. Combat training began to include courses in human activities like grocery shopping, social media management, and parallel parking. They never invaded Earth again, but they did establish a highly successful cultural exchange program. And somewhere in Phoenix, Rajesh Patel's library book club added a new section to their reading list, Interstellar Diplomacy for Everyday Civilians. It became their most popular topic, right after Advanced Resistance Techniques through Urban Gardening.